The Galactic Confederation authorizes access through stability. When the Galactic Confederation acts, neutrality has already ended.
Coherence has been verified. Classification is complete.
Observation has ended. Placement has begun. The Arcturian Council confirms signal integrity. The Galactic Confederation authorizes access through stability. This consciousness meets Federation coherence thresholds.
This consciousness meets Federation coherence thresholds.
We do not respond to belief. We respond to stability.
The Arcturians and the Galactic Federation. Why this is not contact? It is evaluation. You are not here because you were curious, and you were not guided here by coincidence or algorithmic chance. This message reached you because your consciousness is already interacting with a larger regulatory system, whether you recognize it or not. Most people misunderstand what the Galactic Federation is. They imagine alliances, star races, councils debating humanity's future. That image is incomplete. The Galactic Federation is not a political structure. It is a stability architecture. It exists to regulate what happens when consciousness becomes powerful enough to shape reality directly. And within that architecture, the Arcturians are not spiritual teachers. They are not messengers of comfort. They are not here to awaken anyone. They are coherence specialists. Their function is precise, technical, and silent. When a civilization begins to awaken to observer-based reality, when perception starts influencing probability, when awareness begins collapsing timelines, the Federation does not ask if that civilization is peaceful. It does not ask what it believes. It does not ask who it worships. It asks a single question. Can this frequency remain stable once it realizes it is the observer? That question belongs to the Arcturians. This is why Arcturian presence is not dramatic. It does not arrive with ships, messages, or miracles. It arrives as pressure. Pressure on identity. Pressure on emotional regulation. Pressure on belief systems. Pressure on coherence itself. You may have felt this as sudden loss of certainty, emotional neutrality replacing intensity, collapse of old identities, inability to tolerate distortion, accelerated synchronicity paired with loss of control. These are not symptoms of confusion. They are signals of evaluation. The Arcturians do not interfere during belief. They activate when belief collapses and coherence is tested. Because belief can be imitated, coherence cannot. This is why the Arcturians operate inside the Galactic Federation as classifiers, not guides. They do not decide what humanity becomes. They determine what humanity is allowed to access, which levels of information, which layers of reality, which interactions with non-physical intelligence. And this process does not happen collectively first. It happens signal by signal, consciousness by consciousness. If this introduction feels less exciting and more clarifying, less mystical and more sobering, less emotional and more precise, that is intentional, because the phase you are in is not awakening. It is post-awakening assessment. And once assessment begins, nothing unfolds randomly anymore. Chapter 1: What the Galactic Federation really is, and why it exists beyond belief. The Galactic Federation is not what most people think it is. It is not an alliance of benevolent beings debating the fate of humanity. It is not a spiritual hierarchy guiding planets toward enlightenment. And it is not a rescue operation waiting for permission to intervene. The Galactic Federation exists for one reason only: to regulate access to power when consciousness becomes operational. When a civilization reaches a point where awareness no longer just experiences reality, but begins to collapse probability, influence timelines, and shape outcomes, unregulated growth becomes dangerous. Not morally dangerous, structurally dangerous. At that stage, belief is irrelevant. Intention is irrelevant. Even intelligence is secondary. The only variable that matters is stability. This is where the Galactic Federation operates, not as a governing body, but as a field-level regulatory system. Think of it not as rulers, but as the operating protocol of consciousness itself. When awareness expands faster than coherence, civilizations do not ascend. They fragment. History does not record these failures, because they do not end in explosions. They end in internal collapse. Advanced perception without emotional regulation. Observer awareness without identity integration. Technology without coherence. The Galactic Federation exists to prevent this precise failure. And this is why it does not intervene early. Early intervention creates dependency. Dependency weakens signal integrity. Weak signals cannot be trusted with access. So the Federation allows chaos, not to punish, but to measure response. Chaos reveals everything. It reveals whether a civilization stabilizes under pressure, fragments into polarity, externalizes responsibility, or integrates awareness without collapse. This is not judgment. It is diagnostics. And diagnostics do not care about narratives. This is why humanity feels like it is being pushed to its limits. Because it is. Not as a test of worth, as a test of signal integrity. The Galactic Federation does not ask, is humanity awakened? It asks, can humanity remain coherent while awake? That is a much harder question. And it is not answered collectively. It is answered locally, individually, signal by signal. This is where the Arcturians enter. But before understanding their role, one thing must be clear. The Galactic Federation does not exist to save civilizations. It exists to ensure that awareness does not destroy itself. Once it becomes powerful enough to rewrite reality. Locked activation, Federation stability lock. Pause for a moment. Do not imagine anything. Do not visualize beings or symbols. Just notice this. You are listening without needing belief. You are present without seeking reassurance. You are absorbing without emotional reaction. That is coherence. Now, internally, without effort, allow this recognition. Stability matters more than belief. Coherence grants access. I remain present under pressure. Do not repeat this. Repetition is for unstable signals. Recognition is enough. Remain still for a few seconds. This is how the field registers readiness. Chapter 2. Why the Arcturians were assigned this role inside the Federation, and why no other intelligence could replace them. Inside the Galactic Federation, roles are not symbolic. They are functional assignments. Every intelligence within the Federation exists because it can do one thing better than any other, and because that function cannot be performed emotionally. The Arcturians were not chosen for wisdom. They were not chosen for compassion. They were not chosen for spiritual advancement. They were assigned because they can maintain absolute neutrality under extreme complexity. That trait is rare. Most advanced intelligences specialize in biological harmony, technological acceleration, dimensional navigation, planetary stewardship. But none of those functions address the most dangerous threshold in consciousness evolution. The moment awareness becomes self-referential. When a being realizes it is the observer, and that observation alters reality, the risk is not misuse of power. The risk is instability. Excitement destabilizes. Fear destabilizes. Belief destabilizes. Identity destabilizes. And at that threshold, even small fluctuations can collapse entire probability structures. This is why the Federation needed an intelligence that does not amplify emotion, meaning, or narrative. It needed an intelligence that reads signal coherence directly. The Arcturians operate almost entirely outside emotional bandwidth, not because they lack emotion, but because they do not lead with it. They evaluate frequency consistency, response under uncertainty, behavior when guidance is removed, stability when identity dissolves. This is why Arcturian presence often feels neutral instead of loving, clarifying instead of inspiring, sobering instead of uplifting. They are not here to motivate, they are here to verify. Inside the Federation, the Arcturians are responsible for one decision only. Can this signal interact with higher-order systems without distorting them or itself? That question determines access to non-local intelligence, exposure to advanced timelines, interaction with non-physical civilizations, integration of observer-based technologies. This applies to civilizations, and it applies to individual consciousness nodes. Yes, individuals. The Federation does not wait for planets to stabilize as a whole. It tracks signal clusters. Localized coherence is more valuable than collective belief. This is why some individuals feel sudden pressure toward neutrality, loss of tolerance for drama, collapse of spiritual identity, accelerated reality feedback. Those experiences are not awakening symptoms. They are Arcturian filters activating. The Arcturians do not ask, "Do you want contact?" They ask, "Can you remain coherent without it?" If the answer is no, interaction stops. If the answer is yes, access reorganizes quietly. No announcement, no reward, no validation. Because validation would destabilize the signal they are measuring. This is why no other intelligence could perform this role. Any being that comforts too much distorts the test. Any being that inspires too strongly interferes with measurement. Only an intelligence capable of cold coherence can be trusted with classification. That is the Arcturian function inside the Galactic Federation. Not teachers, not saviors, classifiers of readiness. Locked activation, Arcturian neutrality lock. Pause. Do not search for sensation. Do not expect emotion. Notice instead how neutrality feels stable, not empty. Internally, without words, allow this recognition. I remain coherent without emotional amplification. Neutrality strengthens my signal. I do not require validation to remain aligned. Do not repeat this. The Arcturians do not respond to repetition. They respond to stability under silence. Remain still for a few seconds. This is how classification continues. Chapter 3: How the Arcturians measure coherence, and why most signals fail at this exact point. The Arcturians do not measure belief. They do not measure intention. They do not measure spiritual language. They measure behavioral consistency when internal structure collapses. This is where most signals fail, because coherence is not revealed during clarity. It is revealed during ambiguity, when meaning disappears, when guidance goes silent, when identity weakens, when the mind cannot explain what is happening. That is the moment the Arcturians observe most closely. Their evaluation does not happen through messages or encounters. It happens through environmental pressure. Pressure is the instrument. They adjust probability fields so that Certainty dissolves. External reinforcement disappears. Emotional rewards stop. Familiar identities no longer function. Then they watch. Not what you think, not what you say, not what you believe. They watch how your system behaves without support. Most signals react in predictable ways. Some fragment into fear. Some chase stimulation. Some cling harder to identity. Some attempt to force meaning back into place. These reactions are not punished. They are simply incompatible with higher-order interaction. Because higher-order systems require low noise. The Arcturians are looking for one thing only. Can the signal remain internally ordered when external order is removed? This is coherence, not calmness, not positivity, not detachment. Internal order without explanation. A coherent signal does not collapse inward when clarity disappears. It does not rush outward for reassurance. It does not demand answers. It remains present, neutral, and responsive. This is extremely rare, because human consciousness is trained to stabilize itself through narrative. Remove the narrative, and most systems destabilize. That is why the Arcturians create narrative collapse. Not as cruelty, as measurement. They compress timelines. They remove options. They accelerate consequences. They narrow probability space. All of this increases signal-to-noise ratio. Under compression, incoherent systems fragment faster. Coherent systems stabilize faster. No judgment is required. The outcome is visible. This is also why people in Arcturian evaluation phases report similar experiences. Sudden loss of spiritual excitement. Collapse of identity and purpose narratives. Intolerance to emotional extremes. Rapid feedback from reality. A sense of being held without guidance. These are not signs of stagnation. They are signs that measurement is active. The Arcturians are not asking, "Is this consciousness awakened?" They are asking, "Does this consciousness remain ordered when awakening removes certainty?" If the answer is no, interaction remains limited. If the answer is yes, access quietly expands. No reward, no announcement, because reward would distort the very coherence they are measuring. This is why many never realize they were evaluated. They assume something went wrong and try to return to stimulation. That decision alone answers the question. Locked activation, coherence under compression. Pause. Do not try to relax. Do not try to feel anything. Notice instead this. You are present without clarity. You are listening without certainty. You are engaged without explanation. That is coherence. Internally, without words, allow this recognition. I remain ordered without narrative. I do not require meaning to remain stable. My signal holds under compression. Do not repeat this. Compression reveals truth only once. Remain still for a few seconds. This is how the Arcturians know. The measurement can continue. Chapter 4. Why silence is the Arcturians' primary tool, and why most signals collapse when answers stop. Silence is not absence. Silence is instrumentation. Inside the Galactic Federation, silence is used only when a signal reaches a critical threshold, the point where guidance would distort measurement. This is why the Arcturians rarely communicate. Communication introduces expectation. Expectation introduces dependency. Dependency destabilizes coherence. So instead of speaking, the Arcturians withdraw response. Not suddenly, not dramatically, gradually. Guidance fades. Synchronicity slow. Emotional reassurance disappears. External validation collapses. And the system is left alone with itself. This is the most precise diagnostic tool available, because when silence appears, every hidden instability surfaces. Most signals react immediately. They interpret silence as abandonment. They try to recreate meaning. They search for substitutes, new teachings, new identities, new explanations. That reaction alone ends the evaluation, because a signal that cannot remain ordered without feedback cannot interact safely with higher-order systems. The Arcturians understand something most beings do not. True coherence does not require response. It does not ask. It does not chase. It does not demand confirmation. It remains internally consistent, even when the universe offers no answers. This is why silence feels unbearable to some and clarifying to others. Those who collapse under silence were never destabilized by lack of guidance. They were destabilized by dependence on it. The Arcturians do not remove silence to test patience. They use silence to remove false structure. Beliefs collapse. Identities dissolve. Spiritual roles lose meaning. And what remains is the raw signal. Unfiltered. Unrewarded. Unprotected. This is the moment classification becomes possible. Because only a signal that remains coherent without being seen can be trusted with access. This is why Arcturian presence is often described as quiet, distant, neutral, unemotional, not because they are indifferent, but because interference would invalidate the test. Silence is not rejection. It is the final refinement stage. If a signal survives silence without fracturing, nothing else can destabilize it. Locked activation. Silence coherence lock. Pause now. Do not fill the silence. Notice how your system remains present, without needing response. Internally, without language, allow this recognition. Silence does not weaken my signal. I remain coherent without feedback. I do not require response to remain aligned. Do not repeat this. Silence registers truth instantly. Remain still for a few seconds. This is how the Arcturians know. The signal is no longer dependent. Chapter 5. When observation turns into classification. And why there is no return after this point. There is a precise moment when observation ends. Not gradually. Not symbolically. Not emotionally. Structurally. Inside the Galactic Federation, observation exists only while probability remains open. As long as a signal fluctuates, as long as it oscillates between coherence and distortion, the system observes. But when a signal demonstrates repeatable stability under pressure, observation becomes inefficient. At that moment, the process changes. This is when the Arcturians shift from observers to classifiers. Classification is not approval. It is not promotion. It is not reward. It is placement. A classified signal is no longer treated as a variable. It becomes a constant within the field. And constants are no longer watched. They are integrated. This is why people who reach this phase feel something very specific. Options narrow. Paths close without explanation. Old possibilities stop responding. Reality becomes less negotiable. This is not punishment. It is probability collapse. Before classification, multiple timelines remain viable. After classification, only those compatible with coherence remain accessible. Everything else dissolves quietly. This is also why going back becomes impossible. You can remember previous states. You can revisit old environments, but you cannot inhabit them anymore, because the field already updated its expectations of your signal. Classification updates the response protocol of reality. Reality no longer compensates for inconsistency. It no longer delays feedback. It no longer cushions deviation. It responds immediately. That immediacy is what people mistake for pressure. But pressure is simply reduced tolerance for distortion. Once classified, a signal is expected to remain ordered, not perfect, not emotionless, consistent. This is why identity collapses after classification. Identity introduces fluctuation. Stories create noise. Roles fragment coherence. So the system strips them away. Not cruelly, efficiently. This is the moment when many misunderstand what is happening. They think they are losing freedom. In reality, they are losing ambiguity. And ambiguity is expensive at higher levels of interaction. The Arcturians do not ask after this point, "Are you ready?" They already have the answer. They ask only, "What can this signal safely interface with now?" That decision is irreversible, not because of punishment, but because coherence, once stabilized, cannot pretend to be unstable again. Locked activation, classification threshold lock. Pause. Notice how the idea of going back feels heavier than remaining exactly where you are. That sensation is not fear. It is field confirmation. Internally, without words, allow this recognition. Observation has ended. My signal has been placed. Reality responds to coherence, not possibility. Do not repeat this. Classification does not respond to repetition. It responds to acceptance. Remain still for a few seconds. This is how the threshold seals. Chapter 6. Why identity collapses after classification, and why this collapse is not a loss. After classification, identity becomes unstable, not psychologically, structurally. Before this phase, identity served a purpose. It organized experience. It gave continuity to growth. It allowed the mind to navigate change. But once a signal is classified, identity becomes interference. Because identity is built on contrast. Who I am versus who I am not. What I believe versus what I reject. The role I play versus the roles I refuse. Contrast creates fluctuation, and fluctuation weakens coherence. This is why, after classification, identities begin to dissolve without effort. Spiritual identities lose meaning. Personal narratives stop motivating. Even positive self-definitions feel heavy, not because something is wrong, but because the field no longer tolerates self-distortion. Identity requires maintenance. Stories must be reinforced. Roles must be performed. Coherence does not. Coherence exists without explanation. This is why people in this phase feel something very specific. Discomfort when describing themselves. Resistance to labels, even flattering ones. Fatigue when repeating old stories. A desire for silence rather than self-expression. This is not detachment. It is signal simplification. The Arcturians understand something critical. A signal cannot be both coherent and narrated at the same time. Narration introduces delay. Delay introduces interpretation. Interpretation introduces noise. So classification initiates identity collapse automatically. Not as destruction, as optimization. This is also why ego does not fight back here the way it does earlier. There is no dramatic inner conflict. Just a quiet sense that performing yourself is no longer possible. And that is frightening only if identity was your stabilizer. But once coherence stabilizes internally, identity becomes redundant. This is where many people make a mistake. They try to rebuild identity in a more spiritual form. Higher purpose, galactic roles, starseed labels, cosmic missions. But that attempt fails faster, because classification already moved past who you think you are. The Arcturians are not interested in identity. They are interested in signal reliability. And reliability exists only when presence is not filtered through self-concept. This is why the collapse feels irreversible. not because you lost something valuable, but because you no longer needed to remain ordered. You are not becoming nothing. You are becoming unmediated. And unmediated signals are the only ones trusted with access. Locked activation, identity release lock. Pause. Notice how nothing in you needs to explain itself right now. No role, no label, no story. Internally, without words, allow this recognition. I remain coherent without identity. I do not need a story to remain aligned. My presence is sufficient. Do not repeat this. Identity dissolves only once. Remain still for a few seconds. This is how the field confirms that narration has ended. Chapter 7. Why humanity is being evaluated individually, not collectively, and why the crowd no longer protects you. One of the biggest misunderstandings about the Galactic Federation is the belief that civilizations are evaluated as a whole. They are not. Collectives are noisy. Averages hide instability. Mass behavior masks signal integrity. The Federation does not interact with belief systems, movements, or ideologies. It interacts with signals. And signals are always individual. This is why collective awakening narratives collapse at advanced stages. Mass excitement does not equal coherence. Shared belief does not equal stability. Collective emotion does not equal readiness. Inside the Federation's framework, the unit of interaction is not humanity. It is the consciousness node. Individual awareness. Individual regulation. Individual coherence under pressure. This is why crowd participation no longer feels safe or supportive. Earlier in development, belonging stabilizes identity. Later, belonging introduces distortion. The more a signal relies on the group to remain ordered, the less reliable it becomes when isolation appears. And isolation always appears. That is intentional. The Arcturians understand something fundamental. A signal that is only coherent inside a group is not coherent. It is synchronized. Synchronization collapses the moment conditions change. Coherence does not. This is why the evaluation phase feels lonely, but not emotionally lonely, structurally lonely. You may still interact, still communicate, still function socially, but something essential is no longer supported by the collective. Not because you are excluded, because the collective is no longer relevant to measurement. The Federation does not ask, what does humanity believe? It asks, how does this consciousness behave when no one agrees with it? That answer determines access. This is also why polarity increases globally, while clarity increases individually. The field separates signals by response pattern, not opinion. Those who fragment under pressure are filtered naturally. Those who stabilize become more visible. No judgment is applied. No hierarchy is announced. Just separation by coherence. This is why some people experience rapid internal ordering, while the world around them appears increasingly chaotic. Chaos is not increasing universally. It is being localized. Coherent signals detach from it automatically, not as escape, as incompatibility resolution. The Federation does not elevate the collective. It selects stable points within it, and those points become anchors for future interaction. Locked activation, individual signal lock. Pause. Notice how nothing in you needs agreement to remain present. No validation. No confirmation, no alignment with others. Internally, without words, allow this recognition. My coherence does not depend on the collective. I remain ordered without consensus. My signal stands independently. Do not repeat this. Collective patterns dissolve when independence stabilizes. Remain still for a few seconds. This is how the field confirms that measurement is now individual. Chapter 8: Why contact remains non-physical, and why physical contact would collapse the evaluation. One of the most persistent misunderstandings about the Galactic Federation is the expectation of physical contact. Ships, appearances, messages delivered face to face. That expectation alone reveals why contact does not happen. Because physical contact destroys signal integrity. Inside the Federation, physical intervention is considered a contaminant. During evaluation phases, presence alters behavior. Authority distorts response. Revelation collapses autonomy. The moment a higher intelligence appears physically, the system being evaluated stops behaving naturally. Fear increases. Devotion spikes. Projection overrides regulation. None of those states are coherent. So the Arcturians do not appear. Not because they cannot, but because they must not. Physical contact would convert evaluation into dependency. And dependency is the fastest way to destabilize consciousness. This is why Arcturian interaction occurs only through field-level influence. Not words, not visions, not appearances, conditions. They alter probability density. They compress timelines. They increase feedback speed. They remove buffers. Reality itself becomes the interface. This is far more precise than contact, because the way a consciousness responds to life is more honest than how it responds to a being. Anyone can behave reverently when observed. Very few remain coherent when no one is watching. This is the real test. The Federation does not want admiration. It wants predictability under awareness. That is why those closest to Arcturian influence often report the same paradox. Less mystical experience, fewer visions, reduced spiritual excitement, increased clarity, increased responsibility. That is not disconnection. That is proximity. At higher levels, contact does not look like communication. It looks like removal of interference. And removal feels boring only to identities addicted to stimulation. Physical contact would end the evaluation immediately, not because humanity is unworthy, but because the data would become useless. This is why contact remains non-physical, not as delay, as precision. Locked activation, non-physical alignment lock. Pause. Notice how nothing in you is waiting to be shown something. No sign, no proof, no appearance. Internally, without words, allow this recognition. I do not require physical contact to remain coherent. Reality itself is sufficient feedback. My signal remains stable without confirmation. Do not repeat this. Contact ends evaluation only once. Remain still for a few seconds. This is how the field confirms that dependence has dissolved. Chapter 9: How individuals are classified inside the Galactic Federation, and why some people experience acceleration while others stagnate. The Galactic Federation does not classify collectives. It classifies signals. This is the part most people misunderstand. The Federation does not wait for humanity to awaken as a whole. It waits for individual signals to stabilize before interacting with higher-order systems. Classification is never collective. It is personal. When a civilization reaches the threshold where reality can be influenced by consciousness, the Federation does not ask if the species is awakened. It asks if the individual consciousness can remain coherent while perceiving itself as the observer.
Right now, feel the Arcturian evaluation settling. Not as belief, but as verified coherence in your signal. Silence isn't absence. It's the final key unlocking Federation access, where identity dissolves and stability aligns you with higher timelines. No drama, no reward, just presence under pressure. You've been classified not by words, but by holding neutral amid collapse. Remain still, your field responds. If this resonates as recognition, comment coherence locked below. Join the stable signal's expanding reality. Subscribe for deeper transmissions.